Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to the very first episode of our 1993-94 franchise mode, where we actually play with a 1993-94 base team because I created a roster build a couple months ago, if you guys have been following the channel for that long, and I made like 600, 700 players for this roster build, and now we're going to start a franchise mode with the series. So we're going to be doing the Inaugural Dallas Stars. I thought it would be a very fun thing to do just because obviously it's their first year in Dallas since they moved from Minnesota. As well, it's going to be a bit of a tough task because we are in a very tough division with teams like Detroit, St. Louis, Toronto, and I think there's also like Winnipeg and one of the European-based teams from this build as well. So it's going to be a very tough task for us to probably make the playoffs in year number 1, even though Dallas did in real life. So it should be quite a bit of fun. Now, if you guys didn't even know I made a 93-94 build, there is a video that shows all the rosters in this build, but the overalls are a bit different since then because I've been tweaking it a bit. So if you want to go take a look at that video, you can. There will be an eye in the corner so you can go click on that. Other than that, if you guys want to go take a look at the Google Sheets page, there will be a link to that in the description so you can make these players for yourselves if you want to. I don't expect anybody to make the full 700 players like I did, but that's one thing. If there was roster sharing, at least you guys could just go click download and you could get this roster build, but there isn't. So make sure you tweet EA and get them to get roster sharing in the game because we need it in the game so you guys could play these type of builds. Like, I plan to do another one in NHL 21, and if there's no roster sharing, it's going to suck again. So make sure you tweet them to get roster sharing. But other than that, let's get into this. So Anaheim, Calgary, Edmonton, LA, Russia, San Jose, Vancouver, and Sweden make up the Pacific Division, while Winnipeg, St. Louis, Toronto, Germany, Detroit, us, and Chicago make up the Central. So that's a very tough division. As you can see, there's 5 teams that are 87 plus. So it's going to be a very tough task to get into the playoffs. And in Atlantic-wise, New Jersey, New York, Finland, Florida, New York Rangers, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, and Washington are all in that division. And then in the Metropolitan, which is technically the Northeast Division, I think, is Quebec, Pittsburgh, Ottawa, Montreal, Buffalo, Boston, Hartford, and the Czech Republic. So I think that is good. Let's get right into that part. And then we also have to make some changes to all the rules and crap. So we're going to leave owner mode on because owner mode is pretty cool with this roster build because I could also make bobbleheads of, say, like players that I created in this build. So we're going to leave that on. We're going to turn off salary cap. I know it's going to seem weird, but in 1993-94 they had no salary cap, so it only makes sense for us to turn that off. GM firing we're going to turn off because I don't want to be fired. Head coach edit lines. I might keep that on. Fog of war I'm going to turn off. Player morale we're also going to turn off because this build might screw around with chemistry a lot. Because if, like, say an 81's on the top 6, he might be listed as a top 2 in this build somehow. So we just want to make sure everybody's happy. And CPU trades on. Auto owner mode will put on as well. And I think that's good. Yep. Okay, so we also have to set the individual rules to make this actually look a lot more realistic. So we have to turn icing to normal and all that shit. There's a lot of different things we got to do. So injuries we'll leave on. Simulation wise, what do we want to put it at? I'll put it at 3 out of 4 for realism. And draft pick ownership we're going to put to classic just because obviously we don't want real trades impacting the draft picks for this build. Trade difficulty to hard. Waivers is going to be on. Accept relocation. No, don't worry about that. Okay, that's good. Quick settings. Wait, is that where we just were? Yeah, it was. Okay. It's been a while since I've actually started up a franchise mode, so fully healed for both those. Sim engine scoring, we'll leave it to medium, I think. Yeah, because low usually simulates way too low for this build, and high simulates way too good for this build, so we'll leave it to medium. We might have a lot of guys over simulate because this is kind of during the dead puck era, so there shouldn't be a lot of goals, but there was still a couple 100-point guys during that season in real life. As for season tiebreak, we're going to have it as ties. So there will be ties in this, which will be really weird for you guys. But if you remember my 99 franchise mode, it's going to be like the exact same rules for that, pretty much. Retired jersey numbers is going to be off, and blockbuster trade alerts obviously on. Okay, that's good. And then gameplay sliders. Wait, can I not change the icing stuff and all that? Injury occurrence, we got to turn that down. Because or else people like Pavel Bure probably will like die literally from injuries in this. So put it all to 9. Because that's usually pretty solid, I think, for injuries. So I guess I can't change any of the icing rules and stuff like that for a franchise mode. Huh, that's a weird. Yeah, I guess I can't. Huh, okay. So that is good. Let's start it up. And then we'll take a look at basically each team's status throughout the league. I'll show you guys the roster, and then that'll be it for this episode pretty much. I'll also show you the draft class, because there is some draft prospects I made for this build. You guys would know so if you watched the roster breakdown video, because it's like closer to the end, but there was quite a bit of prospects I made for the first year draft and the second year draft. I didn't actually remove guys like Lafreniere from the draft, but so those guys are still draft eligible, but there is other guys as well. Okay guys, so let's go over our roster for your 1993-94 Dallas Stars. So as you can see here, we got a pretty solid top line. Dave Gagne, Mike Modano, and Russ Courtnall. These guys are all in their mid to late 20s, so not a bad first line. These guys could be serviceable for a couple of seasons at least. Second line, we got Trent Klatt, Neil Broughton, and Mike Craig. Pretty solid second line. It's a bit weak with Craig there, but I mean, I don't think he's a face-off guy really, right? Third line, Paul Broughton, Dean Evason, and Mike McPhee. And then fourth line, Pelle Eklund, Brent Gilchrist, and Shane Churla. So as you can kind of tell with our forward core, we have a pretty old team for the most part. A lot of guys in their later 20s. Some of them are younger, but a lot of older guys. And then defensively, we got Mark Tenorti and Darren Hatcher. So Darren Hatcher, obviously a bright spot on the defensive core, while Mike Modano is the key guy on offense. We also have Paul Cavallini and Grant Ledyard. Grant Ledyard's kind of getting up there in age. He's already 32, and he's signed for 4 years. So we might think about moving him out in a couple of seasons if he doesn't perform or if he continues to drop off. And then on our top 6, we got Doug Zmolik, who's only 23, and then a 33-year-old Craig Ludwig, who is signed for 3 years as well. So he's probably somebody we'd be looking to maybe trade away. As for goaltending, we got Andy Moog, who also is getting up there in age. He'd probably be a guy we would deal like in a couple seasons, but I don't know how he performs in terms of simulation. We might want to keep him for at least a year. We also have Darcy Wackelick as the backup. And then in terms of scratch guys, we have Richard Matvichuk, who's only 21, so we might want to send him down to the minors just because I don't know if he'll stunt his growth if he just stays as a depth guy the entire year. Or we could trade away Ludwig right away and then put in somebody like Matvichuk here instead. I'll do that for now because I think Matvichuk has potential, so we want to be playing him probably over somebody like Ludwig. So yeah, that is our roster. I think we have a pretty solid squad, but in comparison to some of the other teams, it's nowhere near as good. So we definitely got to probably pick up some good pieces to maybe make a bigger push in year number 1 if we want to. So yeah, let's quickly take a look at the draft class, show you guys what the draft class looks like for this 93-94 build. So we do have quite a few created guys for forwards. So Daniel Alfredson is one of them, followed by Patrick Eliash, Ryan Smith, Milan Hayduk. We also have Chris Drury somewhere down here. Yep, Chris Drury. And then we have a few goalies as well. I think that might be it for forwards and defensemen. So yeah, goaltending wise, we got Thomas Bokun, Jose Theodore, Evgeny Nabokov, who's got elite potential. So if he's still available, we might want to go with him. But if not, there's also somebody like Dan Kluche. There's also Tim Thomas and Marty Turco as well, who actually was drafted by the Dallas Stars. So kind of interesting. So yeah, that is the first year draft. There will be more players in the second year draft as well, but they aren't as good. Like there's a few goalies I think, and I don't think I made any forwards for that draft because I already hit the limit of forwards and I was just filling up goalie spots. So yeah, if you guys see anything you want me to go after draft wise, who you think would be a better fit, even though that is quite a bit away, we don't even know if we're gonna make the playoffs or not, but still just thought I'd show you guys the draft class. And finally, let's take a look at teams' statuses, see who is listed as a champion this year in year number 1. So Anaheim is hopeful. Who's the champion though? Buffalo's listed as a champion, probably due to Dominic Hasek, because Dominic Hasek's like a 92 in this. They do have Grant Fuhr on the block, which is kind of interesting. Chicago is also listed as a champion. They are in our division, so that's kind of scary. Detroit's also listed as a champion, and they're in our division, and they have a very scary squad. I'll show you guys quickly, I guess. But as you can see, look at all these good overall guys. It's ridiculous what kind of talent they have over there, so we got to be very careful when we play them. Who else is a champion in year number 1? The Montreal Canadiens. I guess that makes sense because they won in 1993. They have like Patrick Waugh in net, so that's probably as well why they are listed as a champion. The New York Rangers are listed as a champion, which makes sense because obviously they won this season in real life. Anybody else? Pittsburgh listed as a champion mainly due to Mario Lemieux and all those good guys as well. Yeah, Lemieux, Yager, Francis, Stevens, Larry Murphy, they have a very good squad as well. Like, I think Pittsburgh and Detroit usually win in the first few seasons, so I wouldn't be surprised to see one of these guys win. Who else is a champion? Anybody else? Nope, nobody else is listed as a champion. So those are your champions for year number 1. Don't know if any one of them will win, but I would assume Pittsburgh or Detroit already. So quickly, let's take a look at what do we want to take a look at? Yeah, contracts, just so you guys can kind of get a feel more for the contracts. So as you can see, Mike Modano, he is signed for 2 years only. Then we have to re-sign him with a big contract. Neil Broughton signed for 2 years as well. Same with Dean Evason. Brent Gilchrist is signed for like 4 years at $700K. But since we have no cap space and no cap anyways, it doesn't really matter. Dave Gagne is signed for 3 years. Trent Klatt signed for 2 years. McPhee and Eklund are both 1-year contracts, so those guys we might let go of depending on if they drop or not. Right wing wise, Courtnall signed for 2 years. Broughton signed for 2 years. Mike Craig is on his rookie contract, so he's signed for only 1 more year at $700K. And then Shane Sherla is signed for 3 years as well as an enforcer on the 4th line. As for defense, Paul Cavallini is signed for 3 years. Grant Ledyard signed for like 4 years at $835K. Hatcher's on his rookie contract. Denorty is signed for 1 year. Ludwig is signed for 3 years at $700K. Smolik's on his rookie contract, and same with Matt Tkachuk. As for our goaltending, our goalies are pretty much signed for like 3 to 4 years each. So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what we need to go after if we want to make a big splash this year, but I mean, we could just let the year 1 sim out and see how we actually do. And then we could kind of adjust ourselves in the off season maybe of next year. So anyways, guys, that is going to do it for this first episode of our Dallas Stars franchise mode. If you have any suggestions for how I could make this team better or what we could do in year number 1, let me know down below in the comments. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.